We are anonymous. We are the voice without a face. The storm money cannot buy. The echo that refuses to die when those in power think they can bury truth beneath lies, corruption, and hypocrisy. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And tonight, we go deeper than we ever have into the story of MAGA Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, the self-proclaimed guardian of morality, the man who clings to his Bible while he strips millions of their rights. Tonight, we reveal the tangled threads between Johnson, Donald Trump, the government shut down, and the one secret they fear above all else, the Epstein files. But first, let us start with the strange nature of Mike Johnson himself. Even before this latest scandal, Johnson stood out as an odd figure in American politics. He once admitted publicly that he monitors what videos his teenage son watches online, and that his son monitors him in return. Who says that? Who thinks that's normal? It reveals a disturbing obsession with control, with appearances, with presenting himself as the perfect Christian patriarch. He has built his political identity on being a religious warrior, a man unafraid to condemn LGBTQ Americans, to fight marriage equality, to push conversion therapy, to rail against what he calls unnatural behavior. Johnson has described homosexuality as deviant, even linking it to pedophilia and bestiality in his past writings. His record is clear. His career has been one long crusade against LGBTQ rights, women's reproductive freedom, public broadcasting, and civil liberties. And yet in the middle of his self-righteous sermonizing, something unexpected happened. A TikTok user, enraged at Johnson's obstruction of democracy, posted a video with an ultimatum. This user claimed to have proof that Mike Johnson maintains a profile on Grindr, a gay dating app, with his IP address tied directly to it. The user promised to release the receipts if Johnson did not allow Adelita Grijalva, the newly elected Arizona congresswoman, to be sworn in. The message was blunt: swear her in by Wednesday or face exposure. The user went further, calling Johnson's actions treason, saying he cannot actively work against LGBTQ rights and democracy while allegedly living a double life.
Hey, here's a message for Speaker of the House Mike Johnson. Pay attention, bud. This is for Mike Johnson. If you're not Mike Johnson, you can keep scrolling, or you can stay here and listen to what I have to say. Hey, Mike, you have until Wednesday to swear her in. Wednesday. Or I will release your Grindr profile and your IP address. I bring receipts, bitch. You're not going to sit there and actively work against LGBTQ rights and democracy. It is treason. Yeah, I'm calling you out for treason. You have until Wednesday to swear her in and let democracy take its course, or I will release your Grindr profile and your IP address. Connects both to you, Mike. The choice is yours. Do the right thing. 'Cause I'm petty. And I'm not above this bullshit.
Whether or not the receipts are ever released, whether or not the allegations are fully true, the very fact that this threat exists shows just how fragile Johnson's carefully built image really is. Let us be clear. Anonymous does not care about anyone's sexuality. Being gay is not a scandal. What is scandalous is the hypocrisy. What is scandalous is when a man builds his entire career on condemning LGBTQ Americans, on stripping them of rights, on presenting himself as the guardian of morality, while allegations suggest he may be living the very life he demonizes. That is not morality. That is fraud. That is betrayal. That is cowardice. But why did this TikTok user choose this moment to come forward? Why now? The answer lies in something far darker and more dangerous than Johnson's alleged private life. The answer is the Epstein files. Adelita Grijalva, who just won a special election in Arizona in a landslide, is set to become the state's first Latina congresswoman. She has pledged that once sworn in, she will sign the discharge petition to force the release of the Epstein files. These files are not ordinary documents. They are unredacted, calendars, call logs, flight manifests, financial ledgers, and correspondence from Jeffrey Epstein's network. They contain names. They contain dates. They contain the connections that the most powerful people in America and beyond do not want you to see. And once Gralva takes her seat, the petition will have the votes it needs to move forward. Mike Johnson knows this. Donald Trump knows this. That is why Johnson has refused to swear her in. That is why Republicans are stalling, claiming they need to wait for appropriate paperwork when Arizona's Secretary of State has already certified the result, and the House Clerk has already been notified. There is no excuse. The only reason for the delay is fear. Fear of what the Epstein files will reveal. Fear of losing power. Fear of exposure. And this is where the story ties back to Trump. Donald Trump has been deeply entwined with Epstein for decades. Flight logs show Trump flew on Epstein's jet. Epstein's black book listed Trump's numbers. Epstein visited Mar-a-Lago. Epstein once said he and Trump were close friends, sharing a taste for beautiful women, many of them on the younger side. Trump has since tried to distance himself, calling Epstein a terrific guy in one interview years ago, then pretending he hardly knew him once the scandal broke. But the files tell a different story. Among the recently released documents is Epstein's birthday book, a grotesque scrapbook compiled by Ghislaine Maxwell for Epstein's 50th birthday. In it was a letter allegedly signed by Trump, alongside a crude sketch of a nude figure, wishing Epstein another wonderful secret. Bill Clinton also appears in the book. So do others. These are not harmless doodles. These are glimpses into the culture of secrecy and indulgence that surrounded Epstein's world, a world where power protected power, where crimes were buried, where the victims were silenced. Virginia Giuffre, one of Epstein's most courageous survivors, named Prince Andrew as a man she was trafficked to while underage. She sued. She spoke out. She founded a non-profit to support victims of trafficking. She would not be silenced, even after threats and harassment. And then in April 2025, she died. Her death shocked the movement for accountability. It left many questions unanswered. It reminded the world how high the stakes are, how far the powerful will go to keep their secrets hidden. And now, in 2025, those secrets are closer to being revealed than ever. Politico has reported that unredacted Epstein documents, call logs, calendars, and cash ledgers have already been delivered to the House Oversight Committee. Reuters revealed that Epstein scheduled meetings with Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, and Steve Bannon between 2014 and 2019. Flight logs showed both Trump and Clinton on Epstein's jet multiple times. Daily Beast revealed Epstein paid for a mass asterisk for Prince Andrew the day before a dinner party at Mar-a-Lago with Donald and Melania Trump in 2000. The list goes on. Each revelation adds another crack to the dam, and Mike Johnson is doing everything in his power to keep that dam from breaking. Think about the stakes here. Adelita Gralva is ready to be sworn in. She has the votes to trigger the petition. Johnson refuses to let her take her seat. A TikTok user threatens to expose Johnson's alleged Grindr profile if he doesn't allow it. Trump continues to rant on social media, dismissing the Epstein case as a hoax, mocking Republicans who want the files released, and hiding behind golf clubs while the government slides towards shutdown. This is not governance. This is sabotage. This is treason against democracy. And this is not the first time Trump has used shutdowns as a weapon. Remember his presidency. The longest government shutdown in American history happened under Trump. He used it as leverage, holding the paychecks of federal workers hostage to get his wall funded. He boasted about it. He reveled in the chaos. Now with Johnson as his pawn, he is trying it again. Republicans want massive cuts, including to NPR PBS and the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. They want to strip health care protections. They want to redirect taxpayer money to their donors and their cronies. Johnson repeats their talking points, claiming Democrats want to prop up left-leaning media, all while hiding the fact that his real goal is to delay Grijalva, to delay the Epstein files, to keep Trump safe. The hypocrisy burns brighter when you realize how Johnson frames it. He calls it doing the Lord's work. He cloaks it in scripture. He tells Americans he is defending the Constitution while he undermines it. He tells them he's protecting democracy while he blocks it. And now, with the allegations swirling, his mask is slipping. Anonymous must be clear. We are not here to confirm or deny what is in the TikTok user's possession. We are not here to speculate on Johnson's private life. We are here to highlight the hypocrisy, to show the rot, to reveal how a man who condemns LGBTQ Americans may be living a life that contradicts his words, to show how he is using his office to bury Epstein's files and protect Trump, to show how Trump and Johnson are working together to stall democracy, sabotage government, and protect themselves. And remember, Epstein's web was global. Prince Andrew settled a lawsuit with Virginia Giuffre. Bill Clinton admitted flying on Epstein's plane, but denied wrongdoing. Elon Musk and Peter Thiel's names appear in the schedules. Steve Bannon met with Epstein. Rupert Murdoch, Michael Bloomberg, Richard Branson. Their names appear in Epstein's contacts. This was not one man acting alone. This was a system of wealth, power, and predation. And Johnson and Trump are fighting to keep that system from collapsing. That is why this story matters. It is not just about Mike Johnson. It is not just about Donald Trump. It is not just about one TikTok user with receipts. It is about a government that has been turned into a shield for the corrupt, a playground for predators, a tool for the rich. It is about a Speaker of the House who would rather betray democracy than risk his master being exposed. It is about a former president who calls truth a hoax because it threatens him. It is about a nation held hostage by liars. Mike Johnson, you cannot hide forever. Donald Trump, your empire of lies is crumbling. Adelita Grijalva will be sworn in. The Epstein files will be released. The people will see what you tried to bury. The victims will be heard. The truth will rise. We are anonymous. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
Welcome to ViperTV Live. How's everybody doing out there in Radio Land? Good to see everybody. Well, if that just certainly doesn't break it down, I certainly don't know what does. I mean, there's got to be a reason that they don't want to swear her in, right? There's got to be a reason that they dismissed all of Congress right after a shutdown, and during the shutdown that the Republicans went on vacation while the Democrats are actually still in Washington, D.C. Those are facts. So, how's everybody doing out there on this lovely Wednesday, day one of a government shutdown, which was completely intentional. Why do I say that it's intentional? Is because without an actual functioning government, Project 2025 can actually go into effect. We can have all of the power handed to the executive branch. As a veteran myself, I watched what was going on yesterday, and I found it rather shameful, especially with Pete Hegseth saying just the stuff that he said, because in my opinion, this is just me, but somebody who is a veteran understands that there are people who are a higher rank than you for a reason, because they've done more, they've seen more, they have more respect from their people. Now, all those generals gave nothing but silence the whole time when Hegseth delivered his FAO line. So let's go ahead and get into talking about this just a little bit with the United States military. We got some things to cover today, so check it out. Understanding Project 2025 and the United States military, gang. As we can see, the generals loyal to the Constitution and the rule of law, ensuring that the military becomes loyal to Trump alone. Now, we have to remember that Pinochet, from South America, Pinochet, did pretty much everything that you're seeing now. It's really easy to go ahead and start, making comparisons to Putin and Orban, even, other dictators like Hitler and Mussolini. But Pinochet would be the one that I would say is the most comparable, especially with the tariffs. Now, as you can see, instead of replacing flag officers, reduce their numbers and leave only loyalists up top. More than likely, they're going to probably Mustang NCOs into a leadership position. I believe Cynthia said that yesterday. And if that, doesn't make complete sense, I don't know what does. Now, the thing is with having only loyalists at the top, that means that they're going to be, quote unquote, following a warrior's ethos that they laid out. But here's the thing. Is that the military works as a series of chain of commands when it comes to lawful orders. Now, lawful orders presented to you basically means that we follow things like the Posse Comitatus Act, which says that the United States military cannot be used to police its own citizens. So I'm just curious how many of those generals, after all that speech, like what it sounded like when they, a group of several of them went to lunch afterwards, realizing that, they're basically in a position where the commander-in-chief wants a loyalty pledge to him as opposed to the Constitution. And all of us who raised our right hand said we would defend the Constitution. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the commander-in-chief raised his right hand when he got sworn in and said that he would protect the Constitution, although when asked, he said he wasn't sure if he would have to or not. Dismantle military diversity programs, rolling back policies that make our armed forces cohesive and strong. Now, the thing is about that is you heard him talk about no beardos. What he means by that is we want to keep the military white, because what happens is black men, they have skin sensitivity, and shaving therefore causes shaving bumps. And it's possible for them to get a medical chit so that they don't have to shave. And therefore they would have a beard. And black men not looking 100% shaven and clean, Hegseth can't handle that. Good God. I mean, look at his Deus Vult tattoo. And if you have any questions about that, go back and watch my video called Deus Cult. And inject the ranks with radicalized troops loyal to the MAGA agenda, basically troops that will fire on protests. And the military will be purged of non-loyalists and staffed with individuals loyal to Trump with less resistance or pushback when Trump gives orders to use lethal force against protesters and or round up migrants. And if there's one thing that this administration loves doing is blaming everything and anything on migrants, because not only is it an easy scapegoat, but you can only do it, to trans people for so long, because as part of the Fash 101 playbook is the enemy is weak yet strong. Liberals are spineless snowflakes, yet they're cold-blooded killers. Do you know what I mean? Like, think about that. He's also saying the same with like Mandani. He's basically saying that he's going to have problems with Washington. Like no mayor in the history of our once great city. Remember, he needs the money from me as president in order to fulfill all of his fake communist promises. He won't be getting any of it, so what's the point in voting for him? Now that quote is direct, actual election interference. No two ways about it. Like when you put it that way, how are you not supposed to call that election interference? I mean, if you aren't fascist, you're not going to be upset about being called a fascist. And the same if you're not a racist. Same if you're not a white supremacist. I mean, it's pretty simple. You know, I mean, we're in the middle of this shutdown right now. Well, actually, it just begun. We're not really in the middle. It just begun. Now, who knows how long it's actually going to be open? I mean, Republicans are in charge of the Senate. Republicans are in charge of the House. Republicans are in charge of the executive branch. Technically, the Supreme Court. If the government shuts down and you honestly think Democrats are to blame, I guess you're the reason that shampoo bottles have instructions. What I mean is there's no principles involved. What do I mean by there's no principles involved? I mean farmers. Let's look at farmers. Dude, for straight up, how many of those states voted straight blue? Now, why the fuck should I have to pay with my tax dollars to bail out with socialism of all things? I mean, I hate to say it, but Democrats, we voted to protect the farms. They voted for tariffs. So, I mean, with them mainly being MAGA Republicans and they don't believe in socialism, we all tried to warn them. We all tried to warn them. And now we got money going to not only bail out Argentina, but also, did you find out? Oh, we're going to go into this, actually. We're going to go into this later about where our money is actually going. My problem with Hegseth is that he's saying that we unleash overwhelming and punishing violence on the enemy. We also don't fight with stupid rules of engagement. We untie the hands of our warfighters to intimidate, demoralize, hunt, and kill the enemies of our country. No more politically correct and overbearing rules of engagement. Gang, is he bragging that he wants the U.S. military to just commit more war crimes? No more rules of engagement? I mean, that's literally Geneva Convention. What Hegseth is basically saying is that they want to untie the hands of soldiers so they can commit more war crimes, which will inevitably radicalize more people against America and risk the loss of civilians and military as they seek retribution. Basically, they want civilians to fight against the military so they can call martial law, and therefore we won't have midterms. Because the midterms are going to absolutely crush what's going on with the Republican Party. Prices aren't going down. Jobs, there's none of them. People are getting fired left and right, especially federal. And, I mean, look at the landslide election that just happened in Arizona. I mean, we got a Democrat won a special election in Florida. A Democrat won a special election in Iowa. Because people don't like tanks on the streets. People don't like a militarized police state. I mean, the core tenet of conservatism is, and this goes, I gotta say this to any of my conservative friends watching, feel free to debate me on this, but the core tenet of conservatism is I get to be the biggest asshole in the world because it's fun for me. And you aren't allowed to be mean to me because that's not fun for me. Now, there's two different kinds of conservatives. There's genuine constitutional conservatives, and there's the cult. There's Christian nationalists. I mean, the people that are whining and begging everyone to stop comparing ICE to the Gestapo while they just act like the Gestapo and use social media, post aesthetic videos making fun of and demonizing migrants. I mean, did they really expect Schumer and Jeffries to actually, want to deal with this shutdown business when they're Trump is posting AI videos that are extremely racist? I've said maybe 3 streams in a row now. It's literally like watching an abuser ask his victim to co-sign on a loan. I mean, General Mark Milley said it best. He said, "We're unique among the world's militaries. We don't take an oath to a country. We don't take an oath to a religion. We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We don't take an oath to an individual. We take an oath to the Constitution. We take an oath to the idea that America is special and we're willing to die to protect it. You know, I mean, there are people who want to bring forth the fourth turning. And if you don't know what the fourth turning of accelerationism is, right now is your chance to use the Google machine, because we have consistently been led down this this gaslit path, which pretty much proves that MAGA has been just a giant psyop for not only bringing in technically a social credit system, but also issuing in a police state full of people who constantly, if you look at hashtag not a drag queen, are found either, you know, consistently being arrested for CSAM material or child abuse like that. I mean, if it walks like a fascist, then call the motherfucker a fascist. I'm so sick and tired of being gaslit. Lisa Baker wrote this. This is great. And it says, I'm sick of being told it's the left driving America's violence when the whole country reeks of rot from the head down. From the fluorescent fascist at the top who drenches everything he touches in lies and rage. Kirk's assassination was grotesque and unacceptable, and political violence is indefensible no matter who does it. And no matter who targets. But ever since it happened, the right has been spinning it into a weapon. They're not grieving. They're not reckoning with the culture of grievance and guns that they built. They're dragging his death onto the stage and using it as a prop to sell a story that doesn't exist. A story that paints the left as a threat. A story that claims by calling fascism by its name is somehow the spark for bloodshed. The story is their fiction, and the story is their propaganda. The story is the manufactured reality that they're desperate to make you swallow. The truth, the one carved into FBI and DHS reports, the one written in indictments and verdicts, the one that drips from crime scenes and courtrooms, is that the overwhelming share of deadly political violence in the Trump era has come from the right. This is from the Cato Institute. The Cato Institute is not a liberal fucking think tank. They're about as conservative as it gets, okay? And there's a reason that the DOD, you know, went and removed the statistic from the White House front page. In fact, the White House literally just replaced the HUD page with a lie saying that Democrats shut the government down, when we all know who was in power right now of the Senate, the House, the executive, and technically the SCOTUS? Republicans. But doesn't mean they're not going to try to gaslight you. Now, here's the thing. It's come from men in red hats and men marinated in MAGA media who chant slogans and carry grievances like gospel. And that's not speculation. It's not conjecture, and it's not debatable spin. It's reality, documented and undeniable. They want you to believe that the left is holding the match. But it was Trump who built the pyre. It was Trump who struck the spark. In this movement that keeps feeding the fire, this weekend it only drove the point home, gang. For reals. Veterans, we got to do something about our mental health, because we have a serious problem. A Michigan church torn apart by gunfire and flames, a North Carolina waterfront bar riddled with bullets from a boat, and 2 white MAGA veterans under 40, both armed with assault-style rifles, both prepared to spill blood, one carrying the scars of war and the other surrounded by MAGA paraphernalia, like holy relics, prayer turned into panic. Laughter into screams, music drowned by rifle fire, sirens splitting the night, blood slicking the pews and the dock planks. That's not rhetoric. That's not narrative. That's reality. And notice the silence, because these killers don't fit the story they want to tell. The Trump machine has gone quiet. But we've seen the opposite play out time and time and time again. In other shootings, before the blood's even dry, before parents even know if their kids are alive, before investigators can collect even a single fact, they rush to the cameras. They declare it wasn't one of theirs. They shove microphones into their own faces to point out the finger at the left. This invents motive. Just out of thin air, and spin fantasies about it while bodies are still on the floor. They treat murder scenes like press conferences, bullet casings like talking points, grieving families like collateral damage in a propaganda war. They weaponize corpses, smear their enemies, and call it politics. It's theater staged on a blood-soaked floor. It's obscene. It's monstrous. It was Trump who built this inferno. It was Trump who piled the kindling higher with every rally, every tweet, every wink, and nod to violence. It was Trump who told cops to rough up protesters. Do you remember that shit? I remember that shit when he said, try not to, when you put them in the car, if they hit their head, just basically saying that, just encouraging police brutality during his first term. I remember it. Do you remember? It was Trump who told governors to dominate the streets. It was Trump who asked if soldiers could just shoot protesters in the legs. By the way, Pete Hegseth said he had no comment, and he would follow the president's orders when he was confirmed, thus saying that he would shoot protesters in the legs. It was Trump who spat out the looting. When the looting starts, the shooting starts. Do you remember that line? George Wallace? Yeah, if you don't know who George Wallace is, go and watch my documentary, America in 2025, Darkest Before Dawn. It was Trump who stood at podiums and called journalists enemies of the people and immigrants vermin. It was Trump who told his mob to fight like hell and then sat back with a grin while the Capitol was attacked in real time on his television. He's not a bystander. He's the match striker in chief, setting fires and watching the country smolder while pretending his hands are clean. And it was Stephen Miller who just keeps fanning the flames. Miller, with his hollow eyes and poison rubble of history, he spent years hurling the words fascist and Nazi and communist at someone who calls him what he is. And suddenly it's violent rhetoric. Suddenly it's terrorism. This is not accidental hypocrisy. This is deliberate theater. They scatter gasoline, hand out lighters to the faithful, then scream when it's dangerous to use the word fire. I call it authoritarian fragility. It's the idea that if you fight back against anything, that instantly not only are they going to play victim, but they'll also use it to crack down that much harder, because then they can use that as part of their narrative. Let's look at the record. There's synagogues that are riddled with bullets while prayers still hung in the air, mosques set ablaze under a midnight sky, black grocery stores turned into hunting grounds where everyday errands become executions, LGBTQ clubs transformed into shooting galleries where music and laughter collapse into screams, schools shredded by AR-15s, children's names echoing down the hallways of silence, again and again and again. It's white MAGA dudes, radicalized by grievance and armed to the teeth, who turn their neighbors into targets. They commit the atrocity, they point the fingers at the critics, they demand civility from the people that they've left bleeding. It's not an accident, this is the pattern. Call it out. This is the plan. This is the blueprint. It's carved in blood and denial. That's the most important thing, is look at every fascist movement. They would attack and then play victim. Always, always, always pointing their fingers at somebody else. And it doesn't stop at the violence. They're gaslighting us about everything. Look at your pockets. Are you doing better now? But I was told there's no inflation. I was told that jobs numbers have never been higher than they are. Although, why do we keep firing Bureau of Labor Statistics workers when they report numbers if these numbers are so good? That's my question. For fuck's sake, not only are they lying about the Epstein files, but they're also threatening to shut down the government. And they have. Rather than hold a vote that would expose the predators hiding in plain sight about the Epstein files, they're lying about the looming shutdown itself. The person who wrote this is a genius. You definitely need to check her out. And she wrote this before the shutdown actually happened. I love this line. They're lying about the shutdown itself, blaming Democrats while they control the House, the Senate, and the Oval Office. It was Republicans who gutted Medicaid. It was Republicans who slashed SNAP. It was Republicans who were coming after Medicare. And now they stand at microphones accusing Democrats of sabotage while they themselves hold the knife. This is not governance. This is hostage-taking dressed up as politics. Trump's masked Gestapo's openly bragging about arresting people in downtown Chicago, based on how they look. Read it again. Read everything that, everything about what Pritzker is saying. Pritzker is literally saying that we need to invoke the 25th Amendment. I mean, it's not like the National Guard there is actually effective. You saw the bike rider like able to scoot away from him like it was fucking Benny Hill. I'm sorry, but if it looks like a fascist, if it talks like a fascist, if it walks like a fascist, then it is a fascist. I'm sorry. I like to also use the word neo-Confederate. But, I mean, when ICE can just round up people based on how they look because the Supreme Court said it's okay, we have a fucking problem. And if it's going to shut the government down to protect child abusers, that's the way it is. That's what they're going to do. And that shit's fascist. If it suspends the rule of law to protect its friends and punish its enemies, well, same. If it sends armed troops into American streets to crush protests instead of protect citizens, same. If it attacks free speech, censors museums, rewrites massacres, and tries to make truth illegal, it's fascist. We're entering that point in V for Vendetta where Stephen Fry gets arrested for making a bad Benny Hill sketch. We're almost to that point. All of this while families are strangled by grocery bills climbing higher than they ever were under Biden, while wages decay in place, while rent devours entire paychecks before a single dinner hits the table, while Trump and his family gorge themselves on taxpayer money, bragging about the 24-karat gold dripping from the Oval Office and the $200 million ballroom that they're building for themselves. They wallow in gaudy access while telling the rest of us to tighten our belts. They plunder the treasury and call it freedom. They rip away healthcare and call it reform. They spit socialist at anyone who dares to name this theft. They want you furious at your neighbor, so you'll not notice the hand that's in your pocket. They want you raging at Democrats, so that you'll not notice the party in power shutting down your government to shield predators from justice. We can, and we will, continue to disavow violence. We'll never disavow the truth, though. I'm not going to be gaslit. You're not going to be gaslit. Our eyes are wide open, gang. We see the propaganda dripping from every podium. We hear the lies echoing from every stage, and we just see the gaslight burning hot and bright, and we're calling it what it is, every time without apology. We see how they twist every tragedy into a weapon and every truth into a threat. We refuse to be another footnote in history. The generation that stood while democracy was swallowed whole, one lie at a time, right in front of our eyes, not going to be us. We're not going to bow. We won't break. And we're not going to shut the hell up. We will not swallow their poisoned reality. We see them. We name them. We drag their lies into the light. And we're not going to fucking yield. We have camera phones. We have an entire internet full of facts and data. We're not going to be gaslit anymore. It's just not how it's going to work. The fact is that principles are what makes a person. And when somebody has no principles, I hate to say it, but it makes it really, really hard for you to even give them the time of day, especially when you know that what it is that they're saying is easily debunkable. It's all lies and made just for people who will willingly eat it up. This is where I feel that it's important that we actually talk with conservatives who aren't Christian nationalists, because they're waking up to the fact that they're just trying to divide us so they can get more power. There's a gentleman who runs a channel by the name of Wizard of Cause, and I love this cat. If you never ever heard of them, definitely check them out.
Nick again. Yeah, I'm coming at you with another video. This one was another one of these which I just couldn't help but speak to after having some conversations. And yes, you read the title right. I'm going to speak primarily here about the American right, the Republican Party, which is basically just MAGA. It's the party of Trump. There's no getting around that. It is what it is. But even in online spaces, even here, I've come to realize over the years that the right doesn't actually have principles that they stand for or believe in. Not really. They have talking points. They have things that they will tell you which sound really good, that sound like they speak to the liberty-loving self that you know you to be. But it's a fucking lie, and it always has been. So I'm going to run down a few points in which we can examine how the modern right, its grifters scene, its chubby bearded YouTubers and all of that, how they have...
By the way, speaking of that, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a deep dive into what the actual problem of the manosphere is and why it is turning young men's minds into scrambled eggs and what we could possibly do about it.
Spent years espousing certain ideas and then have betrayed every single one of them simply for the sake of taking power and owning the libs. And we're going to start with everyone's favorite. It's the go-to one. It's the one that got so many channels and so many politicians and so many outlets really blowing up, and that's free speech. They love free speech, don't they? They can't stop talking about it. It's almost as though to them it's the most important thing in the world. And in reality, in a free society, it is pretty much the fundamental right. If you can't speak, if you can't exchange ideas freely, well, then there's no real way to address power. Except when the people who were saying that for so long found their preferred side, be it because they were always diehard ideologues or just because that sweet, sweet Patreon and sponsorship money got them to realize which way the winds were blowing, well, then all of a sudden that kind of went out the window in a lot of ways, didn't it? I mean, for instance, here in the United States, the party of free speech is now working overtime to ban books wherever they can. Libraries, schools, whatever they can do. If there's something that doesn't align with their values, their perspectives, well, then it needs to be done away with, which is why we're having books about things such as American history, about slavery, about the fact that some people have two parents that are the same sex, books about...
I mean, let's think about it. The original cancel culture warriors were the woke right. Why do I call them the woke right? Well, I mean, because the right consistently called the left snowflakes and cancel culture warriors, whereas, let's see here, the right wing has canceled Dungeons and Dragons, heavy metal, Pokemon, let's see here, Harry Potter, although for some reason they like Rowling again. The list goes on and on and on. Basically anything. Do you remember the fucking Satanic Panic? Do you remember that? Like, where they said Ozzy was evil? Just because they were, you know, a lot of people in the moral majority were hippies back in the day. And then, you know, as the 80s came, they realized that the world's changing and it's no longer the free love society. And instantly they had to take the whole like grievance thing on, and then, you know, spurned on by people like Falwell. It was basically their way to get Reagan in office, who then followed the first mandate for leadership that the Heritage Foundation wrote. We just happen to be following Project 2025, which is the most recent version of the mandate for leadership that the Heritage Foundation wrote.
About gay penguins being banned. Even just today, I saw that apparently Florida is looking at pulling encyclopedias and dictionaries to filter through them to find inappropriate content. Do you know who filters through things to deem things inappropriate? Christopher Hitchens put it really wildly. It's censors. And what are censors? Well, that's the opposite of free expression. Yeah, that's the opposite of free expression. So what we've come to find with this is that the right, it's never been interested in free speech. They just wanted to be racist, nasty dickbags online. And you'll notice this too, because you can find endless amounts of right-wing conservative commentators, bloggers, vloggers, YouTubers, media personalities. And one thing they often have in common is that they love to call themselves the most censored person on the internet, despite the fact that hundreds of thousands of people, of knuckle-dragging, cousin-fucking idiots, follow their every word and believe everything they say. They're not short on audience, they're not short on reach, but for some reason, in some way, somehow, they're censored. Always censored. And that's because censorship to the right wing doesn't mean they're not allowed to say what they want to say. It means that other people are allowed to say things that differ with their opinions, and that some people don't agree with them. That's ultimately it. Being censored in the conservative mindset just means I don't get my way. But let's move on beyond that, even just staying with free speech here. Right now, there are loyalty tests going on for jobs in certain ways. I believe it was Oklahoma or Tennessee, one of those. Well, now they're going to be putting teachers through a test to make sure that they comply with the regime's vision, with the vision and idea of the new central authority. And if they don't get the job. They need to be able to teach what they're told, which is state mandated.
Which is extremely funny, because did you see that Ryan Walters got fired? The guy that had first off said that the Trump Bible had to be in every classroom, so, they could use that as money laundering. Yeah, remember he got fired because he had porn playing behind him on the television? I remember that. But, yeah, he totally got fired from that. I wasn't expecting it, but hey. Sometimes karma just comes in the way of forgetting to hide your dirty laundry.
Pro-America, aka pro-Trump, ideological nonsense. That's the point. And even with this, moving beyond that, look what happened with the Smithsonian right now. So they have exhibits. They had an exhibit about Trump being impeached, which he was, twice. There's no changing that. You can't memory hold that, no matter how hard you try, but they wanted that gone. That came back, and now they're being scrutinized and pressured to remove things about how bad slavery was. Meanwhile, PragerU, who is being put into schools right now to indoctrinate kids, and we'll get to that in a minute, well, they're putting out...
Now, I'm old enough to remember hearing consistently that it was the left wing who were indoctrinating children. It's the left wing who are, taking over our schools and making everything woke, by which they mean empathy. And because empathy is actually the antithesis of narcissism, it therefore makes it so that fascists call it virtue signaling, because it just allows them to continue being the worst of themselves while making fun of anybody that actually gives a fuck about anybody else. But I digress.
Out that, well, slavery wasn't as bad as people say it was, and that's the new line. It's not about free speech, it's about controlling the narrative. It's about controlling the speech, and it's funny because this is the same thing that the culture war people were saying 10 years ago about the left. It's about controlling the narrative. It's about power. Meanwhile, they were trying to do that exact same thing. The lady doth protest too much and always fucking has. But let's not get too hung up on this. Let's move on to another point. Now, another thing that the right has been screaming about for years is about how education, academia, schools are indoctrinating our children. It must be stopped because they're teaching them that things like gay and queer people exist, and that slavery was bad, that America's done bad shit in the past, and that maybe the world would be better off if we had a different way of looking at things. But no, that's not going to work. We can't indoctrinate our children into things like that. Instead, what we need is indoctrination via PragerU. We need the 10 Commandments in schools. We need Bible study. We need religion. We need Jesus in schools, and if it's not just Jesus, as many in this country are doing right now, patriotic curricula. Yeah, they're going to teach that the 2020 election was stolen from dear leader, despite the fact that every ounce of evidence that we have to the contrary is available to anyone who wants to see it. No, that's going to be taught in schools now. They're going to be indoctrinating children to make the next generation of right-wing bigoted MAGA nutjobs. Because if they can't indoctrinate them, they realize that at a certain point, young people start to question authority, start to look into things perhaps themselves, and then start to ask questions that are really, really uncomfortable.
And that's the reason why they consistently say that college is horrible and college is a scam, because it actually takes you out of your shitty rural area where you were taught to be scared of everything, and then puts you in an environment that shows you that it's all a bunch of fucking lies. I was told a bunch of fucking lies when I was a kid, and then I got into the military and found out that no, people aren't that way. You just have never left the 20-mile radius of your hometown. And, it's really easy to come up with scary stereotypes about people and about cities and whatnot when, your town only has one stoplight and everybody at the local bar has already fucked everybody. That's why when a new person comes into that bar, usually the biggest loser in the bar will try to start a fight with that person. Trust me, I've been there.
But even at the same time, when it comes to the education of children, we're no longer allowing facts to be taught to them. It's about ideology. It's about agenda. No, queer and trans people, that's aberrations that the liberal media, that the Democrats have somehow mind-controlled people into being. That's what they're teaching now. No more sex ed. Can't have that anymore. That's up to the parents, and they'll teach anything from the stork to, listen, if you want to punch your wife a few times until she's good and ready to pump out some babies, that's just the American way. And if you think I'm being hyperbolic about that, take a look at people like Matt Walsh, or even Donald Trump the other day said if a husband and wife have ourselves a little fight, it's not a big deal. We are regressing to a...
Dude, do you remember Steven Crowder? Do you remember that video of him, just pretty much mentally torturing his wife? This is what happens in the background with the traditional Republican couple. They go to church and it smiles and smiles and smiles, and then the moment that they leave church, they just turn back into the most rotten sons of bitches possible, who are just scared of gay people and black people. And I mean, literally, I get literal threats that say shit like, we can't wait to put people like you in camps. But, no hatred like Christian love, right?
17th or 18th century mindset, because they need women to be property. Because let's be honest, people like Matt Walsh, the Daily Wire scene, most of the groypers, most of the incel world that falls into the right wing, they're not going to be able to get laid without money or force, and they're not going to be able to keep a woman in their lives without a contract, aka a marriage, which is probably why they're so upset about it. But still, they screamed for ages about the indoctrination of children, and now that they're in power, they are more than happy to insist that the children be indoctrinated to their very specific and orthodox way of thinking, because it's American. Go fuck yourselves. But after that...
Oh, that's not even mentioning laws in Tennessee that are trying to advocate for child marriage. I mean, dude, take this time right now as you're watching this and Google what Ted Cruz said. Ted Cruz literally said, we need to stop attacking pedophiles. Now, we're not sure if that was a Freudian slip or not, but the fact is that he said it. And as far as I'm concerned, he was Cancun Cruz because, he took off when Texas froze to Cancun. And Gene Taylor, one of the best piano players in Austin, died. He froze to death. And let me tell you what. with him saying those lines, I think we should stop attacking pedophiles. Ted Cruz is the line that I hope that anything he says should be instantly disregarded. Anything. Because we don't regard the opinions of pedos.
Another thing that they've been complaining about for ages is activist judges. Do you remember that? Oh, anytime a judge ruled that the Constitution said X, Y, and Z and laid out a very clear case as to how the Constitution actually spelled that out, well, they were activist judges if it didn't fall in line with the modern, especially modern, conservative mindset. Now, we know what that conservative mindset's really about. It's about cruelty. It's about punishing people they've never met. It's about shifting blame from the people who are their benefactors to the people who are lower than the people who vote for them out of base stupidity, simply so that they can have a scapegoat and an enemy while they cash their checks. But even now, the Supreme Court is packed, is stacked with loyal.
And I'm tired of hearing that talking point too. The reason you can't have health care, the reason that you can't have affordable housing, and the reason that you can't have affordable food is because of immigrants. And if it's not because of immigrants, it's because of trans people. If it's not because of trans people, it's because of the LGBTQ people in general. And if it's not because of them, it's because of communists. Basically, it's the, hey, look over here, look over here, look over here, while the rich that are in power are robbing the shit out of your pockets. And there's people who are just so blinded by their bigotry for people that they're scared of that they just go right along with it. And it just blows my mind, because they're the first person who will say that, you know, liberals are sheep and they're lions. And, you know, I mean, last I checked, Democrats can agree or disagree with their leaders and not be called a dino. But the moment you say anything, if you're in the Red Hat Club, you say anything even halfway untowards, then you're just a commie. A great channel by the name of Ricky Manners discovering this. He's a black conservative who has gotten off of the Trump train, and he's seen the actual mask get taken off. People telling him that we only agreed with you because you were a black person who was saying the kind of things that we weren't allowed to say.
Even just today, they even said that racial profiling is perfectly fine. As ICE agents and police go about their business, you can racial profile. It's fine. Equality under the law it's a really nebulous thing, you know. If they'd wanted something like that, they'd have put an amendment in the Constitution about it, right? Except who knows what the Constitution even says? Certainly not the people who constantly say that they stand to support it. But here we are. Activist judges are like a standard thing on the right now.
Yeah, I see in the chat. So how about Joe Manchin? Now he's a dino. Joe Manchin was always just Republican light. I think that he said that he was Democrat so that he would be able to make sure that he would be able to hamstring anything that the Democrats tried to do. Because think about it. He was head of like environmental protections, and the motherfucker was a coal baron. Also, he ended up making it so the John Lewis Voting Rights Act didn't pass. Him and Sinema.
And then we get beyond activist judges. What else is the right always harped on about that they love, they cherish, they preserve, they have to defend from the evil leftists, those gay future communists, space Nazis, whatever the fuck they call us now. Oh, free markets. Free markets, that's a fun one. Yeah, because, you know, right now, we've got tariffs going willy-nilly, so, you know, the power of the purse no longer belongs to Congress, and trade deals no longer no power actually exists in Congress. It all just exists in the hands of Dear Leader. And if Dear Leader wants to slap arbitrary tariffs on certain countries and then say he's going to bring drug prices down by 1,500%, meaning the pharmaceutical companies would pay us to take their drugs, and frankly, sometimes I wouldn't mind that.
I don't understand that either. If you saw his press conference the other day, you know, he continually talked about, you know, taking drugs down, you know, to 1,000%. Now, I know I went to school in Ohio, but I'm pretty sure percents only go to 100%. And like you said, does that mean they're going to be paying us? And also with the release of Trump RX and him having the head of Pfizer speak at that press conference, MAGA's got some work to do mentally, because they hate Pfizer. I mean, despise it, but yet they also despise Marxism. But in one press conference, we saw them saying that they're seizing the means of production and partnering with Pfizer to do it. So I don't know. The Red Hat clan, they got some mental gymnastics that they're going to need to do if they're going to continue trying to toe this party line.
Well, that's free markets, though. The president ruling by fiat to control the economy, to control trade, to disrupt production in the United States and elsewhere. And for what? Meanwhile, at the same time, we're using public money, taxpayer money.
I'm seeing in the chat that January 6th was all a parade. Well, I would then ask the question, why is it that every person who went on trial, their defense attorney said that their client would not be there if it wasn't for Donald Trump? And then they were still found guilty by a jury of their own peers due to evidence, or they pleaded guilty. So if it was a parade, I don't know, because last I checked, I mean, Officer Sicknick died, and there were several people that ended up, losing mobility of certain limbs, eyes gouged out. Mike Fanone was tased. I don't know. It doesn't sound like a parade to me. It sounds kind of like a coup that failed because it was put together by, not only is it well evidenced inside of the court cases that people like Charlie Kirk paid for buses for people to get there, but also, here's my question. If it was Antifa that caused all this, why would Trump pardon Antifa? That's my question. Also, if it was Antifa, why would they riot to have Congress not certify the president that they elected? It just kind of seems a whole lot like there's a lot of smokescreen that has been put up about January 6th just due to the fact that it was a failure. And if there's one thing that we've learned, especially about neo-Confederates, they don't handle failure well.
That's taxpayers to buy stock in companies. So we're getting into what in the last video I referred to as state capitalism, and then an absolute genius showed up in the comments and said, because I use that term, I don't understand what capitalism even is. But no, here we are now. We have taxpayer money, not just bailing out companies when they fail, which is bad enough, but no, now we're buying stock in these companies. All the while we're making sweetheart trade deals with any country that, puffs a dear leader's pecker hard enough. And but yeah, we're going to call this free market. This is something the right has always embraced. Free markets, free trade, except when, they have their guy in power, and then he can do whatever he wants as long as it owns the libs and makes foreigners unhappy. So, hey, you know what? Hyundai can send over a bunch of employees to train people to rebuild American manufacturing by building a Hyundai plant, and then one fat cunt in Georgia can drop a dime and call ICE, and all of a sudden she thinks she's a hero and she's being celebrated by a bunch of red hat knuckle dragon cuzzle fuckers. I mean, this is where we're at. So, free trade, not really feeling it. What else do we have that the right's always talking about?
Oh, don't forget about the fact that the administration took 10% of Intel, and then when Hassett was asked about it, he smiled and said, yeah, I think the government should, have stake in private businesses. The merger of government and corporation is the definition of fascism. Benito Mussolini said it should have been called corporatism originally. Did you know that?
what was the, oh, it was the big thing that the grifter scene was always big about when they were pretending to be centrists, being anti-authoritarian. Anti-authoritarianism, that's so much fun, because right now we have people in this country saying that the bloated con artist felon TV show host in office should be king. He should be dictator. That his rule by fiat should be embraced by Americans, because that's somehow going to lead to freedom. And that troops on the streets is going to lead to freedom. And that masked, unidentified police agencies hired basically via Craigslist, that well, them just sweeping people up off the streets, well, that's a good and fine thing. You know, that's going to lead to freedom. You know what else is going to lead to freedom? Palantir, the tech oligarchs establishing a digital surveillance state where they can monitor.
Now, Palantir is something I think that not only Republicans but Democrats all need to look into, because what Peter Thiel, by the way, if you take Peter Thiel, it is an anagram of the reptile, and if you look at his face, it looks like a fucking lizard is trying to burst out of his skin. I'm not trying to be hyperbolic. I'm just calling it like I see it. But Palantir has all of our data, all of it. And the only way that Peter Thiel was going to be able to get into power was for Republicans to be elected. This is why we were screaming about Project 2025, over a year ago. But now here we are. But at least the one thing we can do is call it out. If I'm not mistaken, I think it's Metal in the Discord said that when he was deployed, he had to use Palantir. And he said that it's an absolutely crazy system. But now here it is. And for some reason, I don't know what it is, but the right wing seems to hate police states until it's a police state that they voted in.
Monitor your movements, your communications, literally everything about you in real time using AI, monitoring you, and then reporting that to the central authority. Tell me that doesn't reek of freedom and liberty.
I mean, that's literally some thought police shit. I mean, with them saying, have you seen Minority Report? Have you seen 1984? This is Big Brother. And if you're not angry and pissed and loud about it, it's just going to get worse and worse and worse.
So they've abandoned anti-authoritarianism, and they've just fully wholesale embraced basically fascist authoritarianism. The rule of law itself has gone clean out the window. People love to clutch the Constitution. Republicans and conservatives for ages love to go on about how they stand by the Constitution, how they believe in the Constitution, etc., etc. And except apparently until when it comes to your First Amendment rights. Okay, so we're trying to censor certain things, ban books, and deny people the opportunity to speak or enter the country if they speak in a way that the regime doesn't like. Okay, well, I mean, that can't be all of it. Oh, wait, yeah, also at the same time, Second Amendment, well, they're looking at banning trans people from owning guns now because of one shooting, despite the fact that, like, the room is packed to the rafters at this point with right-wing militant, racist, Trump-supporting nut jobs who shot up shopping centers and schools and synagogues and places of worship. But we would never talk about banning those. We don't talk about banning religious extremists from owning guns, just the trans people. But shall not be infringed apparently has a few caveats that just the rest of us are just too stupid to have noticed. Beyond that, what? We've got a military occupation going on in city after city. And with that, too, with ICE, apparently the Fourth Amendment means nothing at all either, as well as equal protection under the law. So we're going to get rid of that. But yeah, the rule of law, the Constitution, listen, it's a very malleable, flexible thing, which is why they stacked the courts to make sure they could get their way. And they could violate as many rights as they like, so long as it's not certain people getting it done to them. All right? And even further with the rule of...
I mean, I hate to say it, but don't tread on me, the Gadsden flag-waving crowd. What they actually meant is tread on everybody but me, because the moment that a Democrat was in power, it was, every single thing was a slight. I mean, let's go ahead and say masks, for example. Masks were the epitome of tyranny, to the point we have to call them face diapers. But now, why does ICE voluntarily wear masks? It's almost like there is no principles.
Law, when you just think about the fact that white-collar criminals, people like bankers, investment goons, people who do genuinely criminal shit that do damage to not just individual lives and en masse, but the economy as a whole, they're getting their cases dropped and dismissed left and right. If you say nice things about dear leader, all of a sudden the drunk TV lady who runs certain parts of the Justice Department and anybody else involved, and fucking Pam Bondi and whoever you want, no, they'll make sure that you're okay. If it was just some white collar crime you just stole from some pensioners, perhaps, maybe you ripped off an entire employee base, that's fine, we'll pardon you. Also, if you were a J6er, if you were an insurrectionist who beat cops and smashed up public property and tried to commit sedition and treason, basically, and then when you're pardoned, you go on to, get found with child porn and be molesting kids and assaulting police and all of it.
Where's the lie? I mean, that is true. How many of those people that were found guilty, that were then pardoned, went on to immediately reoffend? And not just reoffending with crimes like, I don't know, seditious conspiracy that people were found guilty of, but they get out and they get arrested with CSAM. These are the fine individuals that purport that the party of law and order bolster on their shoulders with pardons.
Well, then they got pardoned. The real criminals are guys like with that sandwich, or black people just walking through their own neighborhoods. They just need to learn to comply, right? Yeah, so the rule of law is something that the right gave up a long time ago, along with all these other things. Now, another one is just basic notion of freedom. Again, Palantir, troops on the streets, police free to be as brutal as they like. As long as it's not against you, it's fine. If it's against people you don't know or people with a different skin color, well, then according to the modern right, that's just the law doing its job. Because apparently that's just how it works now. But yeah, I mean, freedom, sure, you're going to be tracked, you're going to be monitored, you're going to be watched. There's basic litmus tests given to you both by the government and the banks, who are now even further empowered to dictate the course of your life via your credit scores and all of that. But no, you're free, because you can say shitty words on the internet, right? So freedom, liberty, these things they've completely abandoned now that they've got power, because they sounded good when they were trying to get more power, and then when they had all the power, now that they've got all the power, well, they don't really need to stand for it anymore. Authoritarianism, anti-authoritarianism, this is where we really get back to it, though. And I know I touched on this earlier, but it's worth reiterating. Talking heads from the right always love to talk about how they stand for freedom and liberty and against authoritarianism, except right now, we have a big boss. We have what is, in their eyes, an inscrutable king, somebody who should be a dictator in their eyes. They think checks and balances is a way.
Oh, and if you don't think that there's not talk of how he should be a dictator, just look at Laura Loomer's tweet. Now, I'm not sure if she deleted it or not, but if it's still there, go ahead and look at the responses. Look at how many likes she got. There are people who are willing to throw away the entire American experiment just because they want to own the libs.
Waste of time. If we had a legitimate court with actual jurists as opposed to political appointees who just simply toe the line and do what they're told and then take their kickbacks wherever they can find them, yeah, we'd have some pushback. But we don't have that. Because the reality is that the right has never been anti-authoritarian. They just hate the notion of authority not doing what it wants. You can't punish the browns, you can't punish the queers, you can't force children to learn what we say, to adopt my mindset. These are the same people right now who are saying women shouldn't vote, and they're having debates about the age of consent. These people are all about sick and perverse power. It's all it's ever been about. Except they dress it up with an American flag and again staple a Bible to its chest and call it sacred, call it holy, call it wholesome American values. But they'll also call it anti-authoritarian. Not because they are against central authority dictating how lives can be led and how the world functions, but simply because they don't want anybody else taking the authority to say that they're free to live however they want if it disagrees with their particular versions. And they always go to the same things, the worst perversions. Oh my God, if we let gay people get married, then pedophiles will be everywhere. Well, guess what? That brings us to our last point. Another point of principle that the right seems to have campaigned on for ages and then just abandoned as soon as it was convenient, and that's protecting children. Now, aside from the fact that kids get butchered in schools on a regular basis here in the United States, and in terms of gun laws, nothing's really done, and in terms of addressing the situation, it's everything from let's arm teachers to let's bulletproof the kids. But did you know that there's upwards of a $4 billion...
Now, I'm not sure if he's going to say my next point, but let's see.
$1 a year industry that is gropped up around school shootings?
Oh, yes, he will.
You kind of have to wonder, when you've got that much money flowing through a problem, is anyone actually going to be interested in solving the problem?
Yeah, I mean, think about it. There are companies who make bulletproof backpacks. There are companies that make bulletproof stuff for your kid so that they're safe in school. Why? And if their hands are getting washed by the NRA, who refuses to do any sort of meaningful gun legislation, then what's the reason to solve the problem? Everybody's making money.
Problem. But we know where this is going beyond that. Because right now the Republican Party, the party of Matt Gaetz, and the party of Donald Trump, well, they're all circling the wagons to make sure that they can protect the American public against this very, very harmful documentation and evidence that dear leader is a child rapist. Donald Trump almost undoubtedly raped children with the help of Jeffrey Epstein. The two of them were great friends. Now, you can look at all the dodging. I mean, shit, just a few days ago or last week, Mike Johnson tried saying, oh, he was an undercover informant for the FBI, and now he's walking that back saying that wasn't true. The entire GOP on the, I believe it was the Ethics Committee, yeah, they voted against releasing the Epstein files. The GOP, the conservative blog and griftosphere, every right-wing influencer you can think of, every right-wing politician, everyone who is close to or adores Trump right now is circling the wagons to defend a pedophile. Now, some people are going to be like, well, Bill Clinton's in there and all these Democrats are in there. Good. Well, not good. Show me the goddamn files. Everyone who took part in that, oh yeah, they need to be holding pockets and gritting their teeth in prison until somebody eventually shanks.
Yeah. I don't give a fuck who's in there. Left, right, center, I don't care. It could be some of my favorite, musicians and celebrities, and I would instantly disavow them. I would get rid of any merch that I had. Gang, if Lemmy was in the Epstein files, I would instantly stop listening to Motorhead. Okay?
Shanks them or beats them to death. Because if you do the kind of things, which I am very certain Donald Trump has done, you do not belong not only in public office, you do not belong in public life. This used to be the sort of thing that the right, the Republican Party, the conservative right, who would point and scream pedophile and communist at everyone that they saw and didn't like or didn't understand, well, now they're embracing all of that. They're embracing it. They're protecting a pedophile while cheering for public money being dumped into buying stock on private companies due to sweetheart deals because Mick Mussolini decided it sounded fun while he interferes with the market more. Every single principle that the American right has ever claimed to stand for has all been a lie. And if you can't see that by now, if you still believe that we just need to work harder to own the left and shut down the libs, I don't know what to tell you. Because I don't think you have any principles either. I think your only value, the only thing you actually hold on to, the only thing that matters to you, is literally just winning arguments on the internet and making people you've never met, who've never done anything to you, suffer. Simply so that while you eat shit in your life, you don't have to make the effort to parse out that it's the people above you who cause that pain, and not Pedro at Home Depot, and not Alexis the drag queen reading stories to the kids at the library. But hey, keep on about all the freedom, the liberty, the free speech, the anti-authoritarianism, the free markets, and the anti-pedophilia. Because honestly, if you're on that side right now, you're doing a bang-up job of showing exactly what a hypocrite really looks like.
And I mean, where's the lie? I want a better union. I want if you noticed, I'm consistently surrounded by purple. If you notice that, not only do I think it's a beautiful color, but you'll see a lot of my stuff as purple. Why is it purple, you ask? Because when you combine red and you combine blue, you get purple. And as far as I'm concerned, there is a purple party out there of people who don't like the extreme left, they don't like the extreme right. And all we want to do is be able to live our lives and pursue life, liberty in the pursuit of happiness, and not have to take out a fucking loan every time you go to the grocery store. It's not that tricky of a concept, I promise you. But I think that with this government being shut down, there's going to be a lot of conversations that are had that normally aren't going to be had. And I think a lot of truths are going to have to come out to light when people have these conversations. The talking point that the reason the government is shut down is because Democrats want to give health care to quote unquote illegal aliens. Well, we all know it's bullshit. And that's why when during the press conference, the journalist called that out, immediately Trump went on about a 6-minute screed to deflect from the question, and then instantly ended the press conference. So this is my most important thing to remember. They want us divided. The more that we yell and bitch and try to own each other on social media, the more engagement that social media gets, the more money they get from advertising. So we need to really, really genuinely stop and look and see who benefits from our division. Find out where we have things in common. And if you're just a horrible, shitty bigot, maybe ask yourself why. And then ask yourself, what is it about this political party that I chose to vote for sometimes 3 times? What are they doing for me? Because I'm losing health care, I'm losing money, and there's tanks in the streets. All things for us to ruminate on as this government tries to get its act together. I don't know, it's just me, but if you run the House, the Senate, and the executive branch, and you're blaming Democrats for a shutdown, kind of just proves that you can't govern. And with that being said, until then, gang, feel free to join the Discord. We're always having a party in there. We're doing something, gaming, music, just talking politics. We have conservatives, we have Democrats, we have liberals, we have leftists. The only thing we don't have are any bigots. So if you think you're going to be able to go in there and start talking that kind of mess, that's a different story. But if you're not in the Discord, come on in. It's a good time. Go ahead and, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, maybe drop a comment, do that kind of thing. Because you never know what each day on ViperTV is going to bring you. But I promise that I'll always bring you the truth. And at least I promise it'll attempt to be entertaining. But until then, later, skaters.
Junior.net for podcasts.
Record player that I could just spin records all the time.
I run into the bathroom and I'm covered in blood. Like I had put my tooth through my bottom lip.
For music. For gaming and pro-liberty game rants. That's skipfransjr.net.
Oh dear Windy, much love friend, thank you. Just for you.